Once again in 2021, New Zealand has signalled it's not entirely comfortable with aspects of its security arrangement with the United States. The Ardern government has criticised how Five Eyes is expanding.
The Five Eyes arrangement is about a security and intelligence framework, and it's not necessary all the time on every issue to invoke Five Eyes as your first port of call in terms of creating a coalition of support around particular issues in the human rights space, for example.
Now, this idea of it broadening out to being a body that represents a broader policy consensus on a range of security and trade and economic interests is new ground. So I'm not surprised that it's contested, but in light of the changed geostrategic dynamics of great power contestation and the more adversarial relationship between China and the rest of us, really, it's not surprising that there's growing demand for that closer coordination on a range of fronts.
I must say I'm probably a bit concerned in the way in which the Five Eyes is transforming itself from a intelligence relationship into something that appears to be more. I mean, we now have the finance ministers of the Five Eyes meeting. Now, I don't doubt that there are issues of a significant nature that demand consultation and cooperation between these five countries, but I think the moment you start enforcing some kind of unanimity of view on some of these policy questions, then you're going to run into trouble like what we've seen with New Zealand and China.
New Zealand needs to be very careful because a relationship can't be based on overwhelmingly just one party taking from everyone else. You need to give in order to maintain a relationship. And whilst New Zealand is at times fiercely independent, nothing wrong with that, they've also got to be mindful that they spend very little on the defence of their nation and or either from a military perspective or an intelligence perspective compared to others. So we can't be Four Eyes or Four and a Half Eyes. And so New Zealand needs to lift.
One of your successors as ambassador, Joe Hockey, has described Five Eyes as more like Four and a Half Eyes because New Zealand doesn't really carry its weight. Is that fair in your view?
I think it's a little bit unfair. I think New Zealand is a country of 5 million people. It sees its strategic circumstances differently to us. It does make a contribution to the Five Eyes community in the Pacific and also sometimes beyond. I mean, let's not forget New Zealand actually provided assistance to the United States at the time of the Iranian conflict in 78, 79. All the attention was there on the Canadians, and the movie that played that presented New Zealand in a negative light, but in fact New Zealand helped the United States in that context. And I think to talk about Four Eyes and a blink, to talk about Four and a Half, I think is being disrespectful to a country with which we have the closest of relationships, in which we should.
I very strongly believe in the Five Eyes as a group of nations. They provide us with an unparalleled capability to help inform the world about what's going on in the world. And New Zealand is very much a part of that. Now, whether New Zealand wants to be part of every aspect of ANZUS, they've proved before that they don't, and that's their sovereign choice. But Five Eyes is a very important capability.
In Washington, Arthur Sinodinos is the current custodian of the relationship and is very comfortable working with our New Zealand allies.
I know New Zealand have said certain things about what statements they want to be part of with the Five Eyes, but if you read the latest speech by the New Zealand Foreign Minister, she made it very clear with her criticisms of China and human rights in certain areas that they're not derogating from that. It's just about the context in which they make those statements. What I find dealing with New Zealand here in Washington is that they're very strongly committed to the Five Eyes relationship. They get great value out of it, as we do, and we put a lot of stuff into it as they do. So the Five Eyes relationship is strong, and I think it's getting stronger. And in fact, what I find interesting is that people start to speculate about whether the Five Eyes become the Six Eyes or the Seven Eyes. But look, the Five Eyes is what it is now. And my point is simply that it's seen as vibrant and strong and very valuable.
So valuable that other countries are looking to build their own partnerships in order to realise a similar capability.
It's no surprise that a number of the ASEAN nations are trying to replicate the Five Eyes with what they're calling Our Eyes, which Australia is helping to train and support Our Eyes, which is Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia and other countries, because that capability to be able to view what's going on in the world, to provide that significant intelligence capability is helping to keep the world safe. And the New Zealanders are very much part of that.
Coming up, how the economic partnership has been built